Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely glad to greet you again, and today we will talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video, we discussed that when a person embarks on the spiritual path, he encounters certain metamorphoses. In particular, he starts seeing a lot of sins, a lot of weeds in his consciousness, the strings through which Satan exerts influence on the person and manipulates him. Of course, a person has to take a lot of effort and labor in order to make his glade really clean and eradicate all these stereotypical patterns, all these weeds. And the question arises, what is the best way to do it? Some people recommend fighting with these sins, let's say, simultaneously. Others recommend eradicating sins one by one. For example, if a person has a certain active sin such as judgment or bad temper, it is necessary to deal with it first, to pay special attention precisely to it, and then to deal with the next sin. Or there are recommendations that it is necessary to identify the root pattern. As a rule, it is the root pattern from childhood. A person should find it and then he overcomes it. Then other sins will become weaker. In particular, Theophan the Recluse said the following: "It is important to understand which passions in the soul are the commanders of the other passions. And when we defeat the commanders, then the other passions become weaker." And of course, a question arises: does such a root pattern from childhood even exist? How can we find it if it exists? And in general, what is the most effective way to fight sin, so to say?
Well, I'll put it this way. Of course it exists. And it comes from childhood. I would even say from the 8th day on, everyone has this very root pattern. But as for how to fight it, each one individually or all at once, what does it mean all at once? Simultaneously? A simple question, isn't it? You will fight, as you said,
First one sin, judgment,
then fight judgment, then something else. Wait, but how can you put them all together? A simple question. Okay, let's take them one by one, the most powerful ones. We take the sin of judgment and try to fight it. But what about, pardon me, envy? After all, you can judge and envy at the same time. Or will you fight both at the same time? How's that? And what is sin? Sin is actually a mushroom that we see. Yes, we can pull it out. And it seems to us that we have removed it with the root. But what about mycelium? A simple question. The mycelium remains, and there will still be plenty of those mushrooms, and no matter how many times you pull them out, they will still be there, and you can't get away from it, my friend. The easiest and the most reliable way is to get rid of the root sin. But you cannot get rid of it completely either. Why? Because it is our consciousness, friends. Yes, and it is precisely secondary consciousness that is very active. You can come to an agreement with primary consciousness and find a common language, although it also messes around a lot, and oftentimes, even more than secondary consciousness does. But it's a different topic. Whereas secondary consciousness is quite a serious thing, it's a very clever demon, as they call it in religions, and it doesn't obey us. We can treat it like a wild animal, we can make it perfectly trained, but it's impossible to come to an agreement with it, and it will behave exactly like a bear. If you start training it, then this bear, that is our consciousness or a demon as it is called in religion, it can ride a bicycle, it can do anything, even bring you slippers every morning. But as soon as you look away, it can devour you. Why? Because it's a wild animal, and it has its own program, while we as personality have a completely different program, and the question here is, who will win, and how do we eradicate the demon?
You know, Holy Fathers used to say that blessed is not the one who sees angels, but the one who sees his own sins. And our friends ask, why then does the awareness of numerous sins not increase this very bliss? What is amiss?
They're wrong. I disagree with you on this point, friends. You're looking in the wrong direction. You're looking at the manifesting problems, but you don't see the essence. When a person embarks on the spiritual path, and begins to really observe himself, all the tricks of consciousness, his own reactions, and how he gets entangled in things that he shouldn't get entangled in at the dictation of his consciousness. How consciousness, which is literally nothing, simply manipulates the person himself, perverts his life and radically changes his mood within an instant at that. Meanwhile, this is merely consciousness. It's enough just to slip a picture to a person to which he reacts, like to a certain pattern, And that's it. And the person's good mood immediately falls down to zero, as they say. And that's it. The world is no longer good, and immediately there are a lot of problems. It's just a trivial picture of some problem to which a person reacts, maybe even from his childhood. It is something that can torment a person his entire life, whereas it's just a picture. You see? And the best thing here is common sense. While common sense, friends, means total control over consciousness. In other words, it has no right to control you. It must obey you. But for that you have to apply a lot of effort. As for the fact that we embark on the spiritual path and begin to see a lot of problems in ourselves, those weeds, as you say, on your lawn, this is on the contrary good. Why? Because this already indicates that we begin to understand how this mortal world is arranged. We begin to see this in ourselves and realize that it's not ours, that it is foisted on us. And this also teaches us that other people whom we considered to be bad, and sometimes even our enemies, and so on, we begin to understand that they just have a strong demon in them who has planted their whole lawn with weeds, while in fact the person is good. This allows you to begin to love people, and not only your neighbors, but actually your enemies as well. Why? Because you realize that this is something that has been imposed artificially, while a human himself as personality, that which is actually personality, is part of you. It's the same as you are, and it is woven of the same fabric. I mean, it is even closer than the closest relatives. Let me explain why. We already talked about it. Some people ask a question, so I'll explain. There is a mother and a daughter, but the genes are not 100% the same. Why? Because it's a different human being. She is different. If we take what we are made of, it no longer matches. It is similar, but not entirely the same. Let's take a mom, a dad, and a daughter. Still, she has her own individuality, right?
Yes, exactly.
You see, we differ here in the material world, even though we are the closest relatives possible. However, in the spiritual aspect, we are all identical. We are 100% composed of the same substance. A fraction of the spiritual world, that which we call the soul, of that power which was sent down here, that which contributes to the creation of us as personalities in this material world. It's a 100% exact similarity with the preservation of individuality. You see how simple everything is? So when you see and understand that it's a part of you that is suffering, then, on the contrary, you want to help, even though you hated that person before. Is it really bad to see the weeds in oneself? So, friends, it is necessary to look at problems from the right perspective, especially since it's not a problem, it's a natural process of development. You understand that this demon won't do you any good. Yes. Let's say we cannot live without him in this three-dimensional world, and thanks to him, we even communicate verbally and visually as well. We see, hear, perceive each other, and so on. But the problem is that when he lives instead of us, it is he who sees and hears, and he doesn't let you as a human being understand what another person is talking about. He doesn't let you understand even simple elementary things, that God exists, and that the path to God is only through love. And these are the words of God Himself, which He conveyed through His prophets, while everything else has nothing to do with God. All our activity here is our choice. It is our freedom. Even, pardon me, our ritual clothes, ritual practices, whatever we do. Let's say, if it isn't love for God, then it all has nothing to do with God. and he's not present there.
There is a very revealing story in the Bible, in the Gospel of Matthew, when an impure spirit came out of a person. It went through arid places, and then it found the house unoccupied, swept clean and put in order, and it went and took with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself.
Well, it's nice to live in a clean house, and it is possible to come there with friends.
Yes, exactly.
If your house is dirty and ugly, it's a shame to bring friends there. But when you know that your house is clean and tidy, of course you'll bring friends to show off. But I have another question. Where was the demon? The owner of that house, right? Since an impure spirit came with his friends, it means that the demon is also weak, not just personality, since he can be manipulated by third forces.
Wow.
Well, that's a separate topic, although it's also interesting. Unfortunately, often we face this without understanding simple things and get into serious trouble, and sometimes even end up very bad, but only because of weakness, including the weakness of the demon. You see, on the one hand, it is necessary to keep it on a diet, but on the other hand, it is necessary to take care of it like an animal, for a weak animal will neither plow your field nor protect your garden. Therefore, there should be common sense everywhere. That's first and foremost. While in order to really learn to understand, there are many different ways, techniques, practices, and so on. And even in religions, there are many of them. After all, how many people have come to God through religions? A lot. Even though it's a tool that wasn't even created for that. When knowledge was altered, it was actually altered by those who did not want people to go to God, but it was interesting for consciousness. That strengthened the position of consciousness, calmed people down. But on the other hand, there was a lot of good too. Thanks to those very religions, some norms and morals were introduced. Some human qualities and relationships between people developed. There were also a lot of good things. We cannot say that religions are bad. Religions are something natural. They are like any corporation, like any organization or any business structure. It is natural, my friends, because religions, all our religions, are you and us. We create them, we support them, we develop them. Thanks to us, they exist. And before you accuse someone of doing something in the past, yes, they did it. They altered the teaching of Jesus Christ and made a business corporation out of it. They altered the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad himself and turned it into a tool of manipulation and power over people, as well as profit, of course. However, my friends, we support this. So who is to blame? The demon is to blame, who has such power that he is able to manipulate you, to make you feel something, but not what you need. I mean, he gives you emotion, he gives you fanaticism, he gives you mindsets. That's what your ancestors did. Your ancestors did it, but what do you have to do with that? If you feel God and understand that the Prophet himself said that the way to God is through love, after all, you can become a Muslim, can follow all customs and traditions, but might never learn to love God, then the way to Allah is close to you, because the way to Him is only through love, including love for your neighbor. You see how simple everything is? Shaitan is strong, but people are not weak either. There is a great power in each of us, the power that can pull a person out of the clutches of Satan himself and give him life eternal. One just has to develop that properly. There are many tools for that. A lot can be said about this, about yoga, and things like that. After all, originally, yoga was of a different, completely different quality. But then people started doing physical exercises, tying their bodies into knots, and everything went into the body, into the mind. Control of consciousness, stopping thoughts. Well, you cannot stop a thought. That's a fact, but you can at least stop listening to it and concentrate on something. Just imagine all his life a person ties himself in a knot and invests his vril in tightening this knot. What for? For better rolling down the mountain straight to hell? Well, isn't it so?
Turns out that it is so tucking himself.
After all, it's easier for a ball to roll this way. It's a joke. But in yoga, there's another side too. And such respected people as the Roriks wrote a lot about it, didn't they? In fact, they also described another yoga, the one that takes place outside the body. Well, that's interesting too. But again, there are a lot of
Transformations and substitutions occurred.
absolutely right, aimed at achieving magic and something else. But again, if we look at those very ancient practices, there is actually a certain element of magic in them. I wouldn't call that magic, but it's enough to change it a little bit and it turns into magic. Yet the tools are ancient. For example, if we take, let's call it autogenic training, because in fact, it is what has transformed into a banal autogenic training. Yet originally it was something completely different. Let's just say this practice was last introduced to the world thanks to Gautama, the man who is now called Buddha. Because, as it turns out, it was he who received it from Belovodje when he visited it. And thanks to this practice, he was eventually able to even enter Belovodje itself. At first, during one of his visits, when he was trying to get there, whereas several times he wasn't accepted there, let's put it mildly, certain practices were suggested to him and his mistakes were pointed out. There were such people. In the past, they were called mezhanins. As of today, one might say these are lamas of high rank. And when meeting with them, Gautama actually endeared them to himself, and they gave him an opportunity to prepare a little bit better, let's say, to become purer and to enter there. That's a separate topic. It has nothing to do with our conversation at all.
Are these practices in the world now?
Yes, thank you. Regarding practices, yes, nowadays they are available, and now we know them as autogenic training. Now we know them as Raja Yoga and many others. The elements of these practices have been included in almost all religions, in one or another form. For example, performance of those very bows, concentration and many other things are nothing but the remnants of those practices, but they have been transformed very much thanks to that very root pattern as we discussed, I mean our consciousness. Let's look at it from the beginning. We haven't talked about it yet, but the practice is interesting. The essence of it is for a person to at least learn, to look at his capabilities more broadly, to understand what consciousness is, to understand what perception is, and to learn to work with his consciousness. Everyone knows autogenic training. You relax, your hand is warm, your hand is cold, and the like, while this practice seems to be almost the same. It is much more effective in order to learn to properly discipline one's consciousness, in order to ultimately distinguish black from white. However, my friends, this practice has its drawbacks. Before I describe it to you, I want to warn you, do not do what your consciousness tells you to do, because consciousness will begin to tell you that you should try it this way, you should try it another way, and what if you add something or take something away? Remember one thing, friends, it's like a Swiss watch. Ancient practices are certain developed mechanisms. If you remove or add something, you will compromise the accuracy. So, if you want to get results using similar practices on your spiritual path, first, do not be tempted by magic. And second, do not be tempted by what consciousness tells you, to try to modify it somehow and change something. You can't do that, and you will succeed in something, you will go astray somewhere, although something may work out. But the first step, let's say, taken as instructed by Satan, drives a person down to hell. Remember that once and forever. Now about the practice. It is very easy to perform it. It is usually done before going to bed. Once a day, more often is not necessary. You will not achieve anything. It is easy, simple, and it is mastered in a certain number of stages. in order to get a serious result. Therefore, we will just go through the stages, and one day when people master the first stage and will need the second one, we will tell them about the second stage. I'm saying it again, this is work with one's consciousness, but it's already work by personality. And the good thing about autogenic training is that it allows a person to learn to properly invest the power of his attention, to properly learn to use his will, to properly control his consciousness, and to get the necessary result when he wants it. This is very good. So, it is performed very simply. You sit down, either on a bed in the half-lotus position, if it is convenient for you, or just with your feet hanging off the bed. But you should be sitting so as to be at ease and stable. At the same time, your posture has to be correct, but you shouldn't strain to keep your balance. It's better to put your hands down even if you're sitting with your feet hanging off the bed, and it's better to have your palms up open. Basically, that's a small detail that will come in handy later. At the initial stages, you can omit it, but it is actually better to start correctly, to get used to it, to adapt. Moreover, if we sit down, for example, in the half-lotus position, our hands should be on our knees, and our palms should be up open. Whereas if we sit with our feet hanging down, we put our hands on our hips, that is, in the utmost comfortable and relaxed position, while maintaining balance. The first thing we do, everything is very simple. Even people who have no experience and haven't done any preliminary practices easily learn it because these are initial steps. When you sit down, it's important to feel your fingers, your palms, and your hands. At the same time, your eyes should be closed, your breath is relaxed, and it's better to breathe with your stomach, not with your chest, but exactly your lower breath. Freely, do not focus on breathing. And you should also feel your legs and your back. After that, when, like in autogenic training, you have felt everything, try at least, here it doesn't matter which hand to start with, because in general you should start with the dominant hand. If a person is left-handed, he starts with his left hand, while a right-hander starts with his right one. Yet there are people for whom they're called ambidextrous.
Hands are equally developed.
Yes, their hands are equally developed, so it doesn't play a big role. We begin in a simple way, generate warmth and movement, and when we generate warmth in our hand, we should feel it physically, not fantasize it. That's the most important point. The very key point is that we work with sensory perception. We do not work with imagination and a picture in our head. That's what is important. At this moment, we drive our consciousness into a serious dead end. I mean, we focus on our sensation and generate warmth in our hand. If we start feeling warmth, we begin to generate it in the other hand. Let's say you calm it down in one hand and switch to the other one. You have felt warmth, then you should feel your whole body, how you are sitting, and then repeat everything again, warmth in one hand, warmth in the other hand. This is sort of the main point, but it's not all. Afterwards, you simply lie down to rest. If it is comfortable for you to lie on your back, it is actually better to lie on your back. By and large, looking a little bit ahead, I'll tell you, in whatever position you lie, the practice eventually goes perfectly well in any position of your body. But for starters, it is better to follow the rules of autogenic training. And even if, let's just say for those who will have difficulties with this practice, I'll digress a little bit. Master elementary autogenic training, and then go back to this practice if something doesn't work out. So, the next stage, we are lying on our back, we have relaxed, again we breathe through our stomach in a relaxed and easy way. What do we do next? As soon as we relax and calm down a little bit, we try to feel our hand, the dominant one again, and to generate warmth in it. Then we remove this warmth, generate warmth in the other hand, and then remove this warmth. After feeling this warmth and calming down, with even breath, in an absolutely relaxed state, we feel ourselves sitting. I mean, just like we've been sitting before we lay down, but we do not get up at that. I'm saying once again, you shouldn't imagine, you shouldn't draw pictures. but should really feel yourself sitting. And repeat the sequence if you have managed to feel how you are sitting, accurately, just like you've been sitting in reality. You again follow the elementary sequence. You generate warmth in your dominant hand, then you calm the warmth down, then you generate warmth in the other hand, and then calm it down. After that, you should feel yourself lying again. I mean, you should feel your entire body. And that's it. Now you can calmly fall asleep. It is desirable to fall asleep with the lotus, with God's love, and so on. This is the first stage, the first step. And I'll repeat once again, friends, consciousness may start telling you, I am now lying, but I feel myself standing, or something else. Guys, don't play around. If you really want to achieve a certain result, don't succumb to Satan's temptations. Do not pervert the right techniques, and do not play with them. I also want to say the following. This practice is very good for people involved in intellectual work, be it a scientist, an accountant, or someone who, due to certain life circumstances, is forced to think a lot and exploit his consciousness. For such people, this practice is just wonderful. Why? Because in fact, I'll say it again, it has a continuation, a certain number of stages, let's put it so. As a result, a person learns to manipulate his consciousness in the literal sense of the word. However, this doesn't mean that consciousness will weaken, and this doesn't mean that thanks to this practice, your entire front garden will become clean. It's enough for you to get distracted and a mass of weeds will grow. Therefore, there is no guarantee that you master some kind of practice and that's it, you become a saint. Friends of mine, I'll reveal a big secret for you to understand and not to indulge in false hopes. Let's recall Jesus Christ and his 40-day journey. He is the Son of God. He is Jesus Christ. For others, he's a prophet. It doesn't matter. He is the messenger of God himself. And for 40 days, Satan was torturing him. Therefore, do not succumb to your egoism and your chosenness. You're not a prophet, and you have to accept this. But you can become a part of the spiritual world, and you should strive for that. So, do not engage in simony and do not exalt yourself. Remember that for 40 days, Satan tormented Jesus Christ himself in order to subdue him. And Jesus had a choice to give up or to withstand. It is clear that he is the Son of God, and he was very well aware of what Satan is and who God is. And he was aware that, well, he didn't even have a thought and couldn't have it, and even a desire couldn't arise in him. But nevertheless, while being here, he used consciousness. And since he had consciousness, it strove to dominate him, so in order to overcome it, so that it didn't strive to dominate him so much, he actually took serious and extreme measures and brought his body to exhaustion and his consciousness to despair. Only then did it give up. However, as we already mentioned, this practice is very dangerous, and a lot of people who tried to repeat it, meanwhile at one time, especially in ancient Egypt, it was very trendy. So most of those who tried it didn't return from the desert, while those who returned were not always mentally healthy. Therefore, friends, do not seek to solve something quickly and immediately. Yet, I can tell you from practical experience that there are enough people who embark on the spiritual path and master it very easily and quickly. Why? Because they realize that there is God, and they feel respect for Him first, and then love. And Satan doesn't exist for them. It's impossible to hold such people. Then even Satan has no power over them. However, many of us, we are dependent. We depend on those circumstances in which we are, family, everyday life, and a lot of other things. Even at work, something depends on us. We cannot let people down, so we won't be able to immerse ourselves in spirituality completely. Hence, whether we want it or not, we have to find a compromise with our consciousness, because thanks to it, we can actually communicate with our near, dear, beloved people, and the like. Some people have a question. I will answer it right away. We answered it many times. But still, if during his lifetime a person has achieved what is called the angelic rank, or has become enlightened, has started seeing clearly, to put it simply, he has gained life, will consciousness rule over him? I'll tell you the following. Consciousness will seek dominance anyway, and will hinder him nearly all the time. Just like any other person, even despite the fact that he has gained life. And there is one more phenomenon. Having gained life here, a person doesn't know about that. That's how God has arranged it. Yes, a person may notice that something has changed around him, that some transformations have occurred, that he no longer reacts in the same way to what he reacted before. He understands things more deeply, he begins to distinguish a little bit and find white even in what is black. He begins to see the essence, but this may be attributed to experience and wisdom. And there is sort of no emptiness inside. This is the maximum a person can notice. But the same thing happens to people who are also on the spiritual path and haven't gained life yet, who still have to work on themselves quite a lot. The Lord has hidden this from a human so that he wouldn't stop. Why? Because after embarking on the spiritual path, a person begins his development, true, mature development, formation as a human, as personality, then as an angel, and then even further. In other words, eternity is given to a human for him to achieve perfection. I'll reveal another secret. Perfection is inconceivable. So, my friends, we have all eternity to comprehend true love. So let's begin with what is simple. Let's just love each other. Thank you.
We are very grateful to you. Thank you, Igor Mikhailovich.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you.